Welcome back to another episode of the Mainly Hoops podcast, where we've had kind of a down week of games, as we talked about in our episode the other day. But we did end up getting a great game last night between Michigan and Arkansas. Was that 2 nights ago now?
Tuesday.
It's all running together now. But Michigan, Arkansas, this was a great game. Michigan was up 8 at halftime. And then in the second half, really struggled with turnovers. Turned it over, I think 11 or 12 times. Arkansas got going, made shots, and they get up by as many as 18 in the second half after being down by as many as I believe 16. And then Michigan actually stormed back and just about won the game. Trevon Brazile missed some free throws late, despite making some key defensive plays with some blocks on the other end, but missed some key free throws that almost allowed Michigan to win this game. But ultimately, Coach Cal and the Razorbacks prevailed in what turned out to be like a very exciting back and forth game.
Yeah, Brazile was awesome. I mean, stepping up for Big Z and Thiero, who were both down. Big Z with the ankle and Thiero was sick, so like they didn't really have a huge impact. I mean, Thiero played more minutes than Coach Cal wanted him to play. That, like he was saying in his post-game presser, he only wanted him to play like 10 minutes. He ended up playing 22. But was productive in the time that he was out there in his short spurts. Jonas Adu, he's looking closer to 100%. He didn't look right to start the year. The knee was kind of bothering him. He still doesn't look like Jonas Adu at Tennessee, but like I think he's getting closer, and he got on the glass a little bit. But overall, I mean, it was a fun back and forth game. I didn't think Arkansas had much of a chance to come back after what happened early in that game. I mean, Michigan was just raining threes and just kind of picking apart this Arkansas defense. I mean, at one point in this game, Michigan had made 11 shots in a row, and they just really had no answer. Like when Michigan doesn't turn the ball over, I mean, they score basically every time. I mean, they shot 58% from the floor, 8 of 18 from three. But the problem was they turned the ball over too much, and that's been their issue all year long. They rate in like the 330s in turnover rate so far in the entire country this year. So it's been a bit of a problem. I think it's something that they can clean up, though. I think it's more of a continuity issue. Like none of these guys have really played together throughout their career besides like Burnett and Will Cheddar. So I think it's something that they're going to be able to figure out as the season goes on, and it's going to make this offense like even more dangerous than it already is. And particularly Danny Wolf was great. He almost had a triple double, went 14, 9, and 9. And he's a super tough cover for anyone. I mean, especially when they run that 4-5 pick and roll. I mean, opposing four-men aren't used to guarding that action. Like they're just not like great ball screen navigators. So, and you're pulling away both defensive bigs away from the rim, just making it super tough to cover, forcing a guard to go protect the rim at times. So yeah, it's something that other teams are going to need to figure out. And obviously Michigan needs to clean up the turnovers. And yeah, Brazile was excellent. Big defensive play late in that game. Flan made some great plays as well, especially to end the first half to kind of get them back into the game. He made a couple huge shots. He also had 7 assists, was making plays for others. John L. Davis still hasn't really figured it out yet, but they had enough other guys to step up and ultimately, fend off the Michigan comeback and get the win.
Yeah. I thought it was funny at one point in this game. I think the only player that was on the court that actually started at either one of these schools was Trevon Brazile. I think everyone else that was on the court was a transfer. It was just like that's just college basketball in a nutshell, right? You go around the court and you're like Ohio State, Yale, FAU. You're just going through it all. Like these guys have come from all over, right? Both of these teams are filled with guys that started elsewhere and now find themselves here. I thought in the second half, DJ Wagner was really good. He hit some big shots for them. Actually scored it pretty efficiently, knocked down a couple threes, which is always going to help his game. If he's making some threes, he was 2 for 3 from 3. So if he's making that shot, that makes his offensive game a lot easier. And honestly, it makes Arkansas's offensive game a lot easier too. But like you said, about the arrow. Cal only wanted to play him 10 minutes in this game. It sounded like he was begging him because he wasn't even going to play, and Cal was like, "Listen, like, can you just give me 10 minutes?" And then he gave that like Cal smirk, like, yeah, I ended up playing him a little bit too much. Played him 22. But yeah, I mean, Boogie Flan looks to be the most dynamic player on this Arkansas team. Like we talked about, like he needed to step up and become that playmaker for them because they didn't have a true guard that could attack and get downhill, create offense for others, and create offense for himself. But he's had some games where he struggled efficiency wise. He was 6 for 18 in this game, but he just does so much for them in terms of creating offense and forcing the defense to guard them differently. That he's too valuable. Like he's been their most valuable player probably up to this point.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, he was inefficient shooting, but he got to the line a fair amount in this game. But yeah, they need his playmaking ability and his off the dribble shooting, especially because John L. Davis hasn't really stepped up. Wagner shot a little bit better than he typically does. I don't really trust his shooting over the long term, and they don't really have a bench option who can go in and like get you buckets consistently. I know Billy Richmond's had a few positive moments. Carter Knox hasn't really stepped up and been anywhere near what he was supposed to be. So Flan, being ahead of schedule is definitely big for this Arkansas team. People counted out Arkansas a little bit too early, and like they showed that they can compete with any team in the country with their overall talent, and their front court versatility is big time, especially on the defensive side.
Yeah, and Big Z seems to be getting phased out right now. I saw a moment in the game the other night. I think he took a fadeaway three off an inbound in the right corner. And Coach Cal just kind of looked at him and like, what are you doing, man? And immediately pulled him out. And it just seems like the Big Z kind of sees the writing on the wall that like, he just doesn't bring enough. And he tries to do things kind of out of his skill set sometimes that is now leading them to play Adu more now that he's getting healthier. So feels like Big Z is probably going to be the odd man out there.
Yeah, they need more consistency up front. And like Adu knows where to be. He knows where to be defensively all the time. He's a
He also knows
experienced player.
his role.
Absolutely.
Right?
And Big Z does not know his role. He's been making shots to start the year, and like they're kind of just riding the hot hand a little bit with his 3-point shooting. Like he was going to start missing a lot of these shots, and he's a super undisciplined player on both sides. As talented as he is, I don't see him being like a defensive anchor, and I don't see him being able to provide extremely like positive output on the offensive side consistently. So I mean, I think Adu needs to be the primary big, and that's what it looks like. Despite like him not playing as much due to his ankle troubles right now, I think he ends up getting closer to like 15 minutes a game, which is like where I would like to see him at.
Yeah. So another game tonight, really one of the only other good games this week. The rivalry between Iowa State and Iowa. This game was at Iowa, and Iowa was up at halftime by 7 and looking like they were going to maybe mess around and win this game against the number 3 team in the country. But Iowa State had other ideas. They came out in the second half, won the second half 52-36, and ended up winning 89-80. Just going to show that like Iowa State has offense now. This isn't, this game several years ago probably would have been in the 50s, low 60s. But this game now was 89-80, as I said. So, this appeared to be a good game. I know you were probably locked in on it the whole time.
Yeah, I absolutely was. I mean, if you would have told me Iowa State was going to go up 80, just like they did, well, they gave up 75 2 years ago at Carver Hawkeye, they ended up losing 75-56. Like when they were on the come up, when they were a ranked team at that point, but now they have the offense. They were able to get up and down with Iowa. I mean, they kind of stole this game. Like Iowa, they were winning a fair amount of this game. Like from the jump, they hit a bunch of shots. They were unconscious early in this game. They spaced out Iowa State's defense, gave them a lot of issues. Like if you're able to take care of the ball and space out these Iowa State defenders who kind of want to take away the rim and they're okay with giving up some open threes, and in return for turnovers, which they didn't get. Like they get into a tough spot, and Iowa's a pretty tough matchup for them defensively, and it did show early in the game. They made some adjustments. They stayed a little more connected to shooters in the second half. Did a nice job there, but ultimately it was the Iowa State offense that won this game. Joshua Jefferson was incredible. I mean, he went for 19 and 10 along with 7 assists. They played through him late in this game. He made a couple great passes on for some cutters, and when they sent 2 guys at him, like it was an automatic assist for the guy. And he's part of the transformation of this Iowa State team. Curtis Jones was great as well. I mean, he could be the best 6-man in the country right now. I mean, he's averaging 15 a game. He had 23 off the bench tonight. Went like 5 of 8 from 3. So he's another piece, obviously, to the offense that is stepping into like top 10 status, in my opinion. And Taman Lipsey's starting to hit shots, and he kind of hit his stride. So he looks a little bit healthier as well, although he did turn his ankle in this game. But yeah, he definitely looks much better. Everyone stepped up when Keyshawn Gilbert didn't necessarily have it. He kind of struggled, went 3 for 13 for the floor.
Killed us.
The other guys got it done. So every time I watch this team, I get more and more excited about what this team can do in the long term and on the national scale. And obviously, like, this was a bad matchup for them realistically, and they were able to still walk out of like a tough rivalry game with a win. And obviously, like, they were the more physical team throughout this game, and that really helped. But yeah, it was definitely exciting to watch.
Yeah. How about the balanced attack from Iowa? Just to talk about them for a minute. They had 6 guys in double figures. Quite impressive from them. You would expect kind of Sanford to be their guy, but they had 6 guys in double figures with Owen Freeman kind of leading them there.
Yeah, they forced them to move the ball. Iowa State forced Iowa to move the ball, and that's what they're best at. They're great at taking care of the ball, and they're great at playing connected, playing together, and finding the open man for an open look. And they did that pretty much all night. It just came down to them missing more shots in the second half than they did in the first half. Like, they went on a stretch where, Laji Dembele was knocking down corner 3 after corner 3. I think he ended up with 4 threes. He made 3 in a row at one point. Like, there wasn't much Iowa State could have done with their defensive style. And Iowa was able to take advantage of it until, Sanford missed some open looks late in this game that could have turned this game around. But ultimately, they were a little bit too 3-point reliant, I think, to a little bit too jump shot reliant. And that's a big reason why they lost.
Yeah. But another quality win. This Iowa team's a little bit better than I think we had expected, at least this soon. So quality win for Iowa State in a rivalry game on the road, just further proving that they're going to be a force to be reckoned with moving forward. So another quick shout out on a game from this week. DePaul, they're still looking for their first regular season Big East win since January 18th, 2023. Last night, I remember checking the box score in the first half. They were up on Providence. Then looked back, and DePaul, led by David Skogman, couldn't get it done. Lost in overtime to the Friars, unfortunately. But it seems like they're at least trending in the right direction. I will say, like they seem to be better sooner than expected, at least under Chris Holtmann.
Yeah, they're definitely better. They're better on the offensive side too, although they missed a ton of shots in this game. And I guess credit to what Providence was able to do defensively, running the shooters off the line a bit. But yeah, I mean, this DePaul team, they got some things to work out. I mean, it's a brand new roster, and I do like the offense. It's a bit of like what you
one guy
call a mid-major all-star team, but
they didn't return one guy from last year, I don't think.
Yeah, no, that entire roster's gone. I mean, it's kind of an ideal Chris Holtmann roster, like having weapons all over the place. It's just a matter, like, they need to figure out the defense, obviously. They don't have one, like, good defender on this team, maybe besides, like, a Connor Enright. Like, I think that would be about it on the perimeter. They don't really have much up front for resistance, and that's going to be an issue against, like, bigger Big East opponents that you're going to see, like, guys like Kalkbrenner are going to eat this team alive. So, I mean, they're definitely going to pick up their first Big East win. Like, they should have won this game. Like, it kind of got stolen from them late. but I don't think they're like going to make any noise in this conference. I definitely think they can get to 6 or 7 wins in a 20 game schedule. So I mean, I think they'll be fine.
Yeah. And enough about them. Till they win a couple, we're not going to talk too much about the Blue Demons. They don't have Javon Freeman Liberty anymore, or David Jones, or any of those guys. But as for some players, as we like to do, kind of giving them some shout outs here every so often, especially when games are kind of dead. So a couple shout outs for me. North Florida transfer, we spent a bunch of time on him, but I think some spotlight needs to be put on him. And that's Chaz Lanier at Tennessee. He's led them to be the number 1 team in the country. Going to get a test here on Saturday against Illinois. But he's averaging over 19 a game on 48% from the field, 48% from 3. He's just so consistent with his shot. Every shot looks the same. And honestly, I was looking today trying to dig up some mock drafts. Like, this guy has got to start to be in the conversation for some NBA buzz, I would think. Like, I know he's a 5th-year guy, but that it doesn't really seem to matter. Like, look at Connect. He was drafted, as a older guy, and he's producing at the NBA level. Like, if he can come in and make shots, like, that's a luxury for NBA teams. So I wouldn't be at all surprised if he continues to shoot this way and play this way, which he's shown to be very capable of over his 5 years. I wouldn't be surprised if he starts to shoot up NBA draft boards.
Yeah, I think he should definitely you should throw a flyer at him in the second round. Like, I think he's probably the best movement shooter in the country, the most consistent, one of the quickest shots in the country. Like, it's a low release, but he gets it up so quick that you can't really get to it. And he fits Rick Barnes' system pretty much perfectly. Like, he loves to run shooters off screens, and like, he'll run off curl screens in the mid range, and then he'll get some open looks for some other things that Barnes likes to scheme up. And you leave him open, it's pretty much automatic. I mean, I don't think he's going to finish where he's at right now. I believe he's still at like 50% right now on the season.
Yeah, 48.4 from 3.
Yeah, I'd be surprised if he finished at 48 on the volume that he's taking, but he's still an elite shooter. Like, if you shoot 40% with the volume that he's getting, like, you're top tier in the entire nation. So yeah, credit to him, and credit to Rick Barnes for going out and getting another elite mid-major find.
Yeah. The next player for me I wanted to talk about is Kasparas Yakachonis at Illinois. He appears to be like a do-it-all. I know we've had our issues with his turnovers, but like, this dude's going to get drafted early in the NBA draft if he continues to play. I think he's projected top 10 right now, but like, his last 4 games, he's scored over 20 in all of them, had at least 6 rebounds in all of them, and he's had, I believe, at least 5 assists in all of them, maybe except one. But against Northwestern the other night, he had 20, 10 and 7, 24, 6 and 5 against Wisconsin the other night in a big win. Like, he's been super, super impressive. And I watched that game against Northwestern. At the end, he just looked so comfortable in overtime, taking big shots, not afraid of the moment. Like, we've talked poorly about him in terms of how comfortable he looks, maybe too comfortable at times, a little bit careless with the basketball. But there is some positive to that, because he's not afraid of the big moment. He takes big shots and he makes them. He's a good shooter. I think he's shooting 44% from 3. So he's been really good. And I think he really elevates the ceiling of this Illinois team that I really didn't even know if they were going to be that good. There were a lot of question marks around this team. Of course, Brad Underwood's a great coach, but he has a basically whole new roster.
Yeah, I mean, the shooting is the big trait that's been able to translate from the European game for him. Like, I don't think he shot it all that well over there, but yeah, and it's a great point about maybe being a little bit too comfortable at times, but that's what makes him what he is. And Underwood said like he will live with the turnovers as long as he's still making great plays and he's being himself out there, because the rest of the guys around him take care of the ball at an elite level. So they're not really losing all that much value there. Like, let him go make plays. And like him and Avicic in the pick and pop game is, you can't guard it because you can't guard either. You can't guard both. Like if you play drop, Avicic is going to hit a three, or or he could hit a mid range jumper. Yeah, Kachonis could. And if you blitz him, he's going to find the open man. He's just, yeah, he's an elite point guard already for, being an 18-year-old. And yeah, this team has a super high ceiling now, especially on the offensive side. I've kind of flipped team. I was a little bit down on them until I saw like what they truly were. But now, honestly, I think they might be the best team in the Big Ten.
Yeah, no, they're legit. Especially if he just plays with such a good pace, which I love. Now I wanted to quickly give a team shout out, and for kind of a different reason.
Love this one.
I wanted to talk about Green Bay. Green Bay, some people might not even know that's a school, but their coach Green Bay has the leading scorer in the country, averaging over 28 points a game, and their coach benched the leading scorer in the country because of he wasn't playing up to the standard that he wanted for Green Bay basketball. And so he let him know he was going to bench him, and that's what he did. And, I think that is – I think it's awesome, really. I think it goes to show these guys that, like, nobody is untouchable. Like, you're all replaceable. And if you're not – I'm going to hold each player to the same standard. So, if you're trying to build a good program, like, that's the way you have to do it, right? You got to build it based on good habits and a culture, and good for the Green Bay coach, kind of sticking to it, right? Most coaches probably would let that leading scorer in the country just kind of do whatever he wants because he's the leading scorer in the country, but everyone is the same, which I appreciate.
Yeah, I don't mind that part, honestly. Like him benching, a guy who's he's the nation's leading scorer. Like it's a ballsy move to do that when you're in the middle of a season, in the middle of a conference play. Like I believe he benched him for a conference game, and they're still sitting at 0-3. I'm just not a fan of the hire that Green Bay made. It was Doug Gottlieb. He's hosting like his own radio show. He's had his own radio show for a very long time. He's still like managing that along with trying to be a college basketball coach. He's going on there criticizing other players, not in college, but like in the NBA. It's just like, how do you manage all of that stuff? And like Doug Gottlieb, he's never had a college job. He's never been a head coach before. So it's a bit weird. I don't understand the hire really. Like they lost a great coach in Sundance Wicks who went to Wyoming, but I just don't completely understand why you would give the keys to a guy who has never had a job. He's never been an assistant. He's never done any of that. Like he's a good basketball mind for being on a radio show. And clearly he's trying to set a standard here. He's trying to create a culture, which is completely fair. And benching that guy, maybe he has some sort of character issues going on there. But overall, I didn't like the hire at Green Bay. And I've seen a lot of slander this hire in the past, and I'm kind of in on it. But setting the culture, like I completely get it.
Yeah. Now you had a few in mind too. Our boy Keno Lilly Jr. over at Brown covered the spread for Brown against Rhode Island the other night with a big performance.
Yeah, and they won the game outright too. Knocking down URI for the first time this season. Went for 23 and 10 in a double overtime game. And he's averaging 20 a game on the season. And yeah, he's a great movement shooter. He's been great throughout his entire career. So credit to him. I think this is going to turn into my mid-major spotlight section here because I got a couple other ones. Another one, I got Max Brooks, one of our America East guys from UMass Lowell. He had 18, 9, and 8 blocks in a win over LIU. He's big for that team. He's big for their rim protection, and they could probably compete in the America East with Vermont being a little bit down this year. And the third one, Jakari White from North Dakota State. He had 27 on 7 of 9 from 3 in an upset win over Butler. And, this isn't even their first big upset of the year. They also upset Santa Clara in overtime at Santa Clara this season. And there's a bunch of shooters on this North Dakota State team it gives them that, upset ability with if they have a hot shooting night, and they did again. I mean, he made 7 of their 13 threes against Butler, and like they jumped all over him from the start. They were up big at one point. They were up 18-20 at one point in this game and fended off a comeback. So credit to those guys, credit to Jakari White for leading the upset win.
Yeah, I was just looking. I quickly pulled up Ken Palm because I saw they played LIU, and they're usually in like the bottom 10 of Ken Palm every year. But I'm going to shout them out real quick. They're up to 4-8 at 332. So
wow,
they've moved up this year. Man, our Hatters at Stetson need to figure some things out.
They lost everyone. I don't think they're figuring it out.
They lost everyone. 1-8 right now, 338 in Ken Palm. They're struggling.
Yeah,
but
Blackman left for a bag at Miami.
Yeah. Had a couple other guys go to Utah State and UCSB.
Yep.
But yeah, Mississippi Valley State holding strong there at 364.
Yeah, that's where they belong.
And that's saying something. Time, so. And that's saying something because Coppin State in the MEAC is 0-11 at 363. So
where's IU Indy at? Is IU Indy still trending at the bottom?
I don't know. Who'd they hang around with?
I've heard some good things about that team.
Who did they hang around with earlier this year?
They hung around with Xavier.
Yeah, 341
at this point.
Yeah, 341.
See, that's positive. They used to sit at the bottom.
Yeah. Where are the Black Bears at? They picked up a nice.
They're
in
the 200s right now. They're sitting in the 200s.
211.
Yeah.
Wow.
I'm telling you, Chris Markwood has that program kind of flipped around. Like this is the best they've been in a long time.
Yeah, they're 7-5. Like they have a shot to compete in the.
They're top 4 teams in that conference.
Yeah, they really have a shot. So exciting to see the Black Bears playing some good hoop.
They're going to take down the Catamounts at home. I'm telling you. Hopefully, I'm there to see it.
I'll be curious to see what that spread is.
Maine will be favored at that point. Vermont's been horrible.
Yeah. But anyway, moving on to some games this weekend. We've got a few good games, mostly on Saturday. Sunday's kind of a dud. But Saturday we have Texas A&M and Purdue. This game's in Indianapolis. So effectively pretty much a home game for Purdue, not at Mackey Arena, but playing at Gainbridge Fieldhouse where the Pacers play. This is going to be a top 25 matchup. I believe it's 11 versus 17 in this game. So, this is one of the bigger games of the weekend, one of the only ranked games this weekend. So definitely looking forward to this one.
Yeah, definitely. When I was looking at this game, like I came away with it with like 2 question marks, one for each side. Like, can Purdue keep A&M off the glass? Which is like a weird thing to say about a Purdue team because they're always so good on the defensive glass, although they don't have Edey anymore. So it makes it a little bit tougher. They rank in like outside the 150 in defensive rebound rate, which is kind of crazy to say about a Matt Painter team. And then the other thing I walked away with was, can A&M limit Purdue shooters from getting super clean looks? A&M isn't going to play that drop coverage like Maryland did against Braden Smith. Like Smith isn't going to get clean looks off the dribble, but he's going to be able to be a playmaker for these other shooters like Lawyer, like Colvin and Heidi. So in A&M, like they typically like to take away the rim. They like to send 2 guys. They'll send 2 guys at Kaufman-Renn fairly often. Kaufman-Renn's a great passer as well. So limiting these spot up shooters is another key in this game. But A&M's pressure overall could kind of bother Braden Smith. And if Fletcher Lawyer is forced to handle the ball at all, I think it's going to create some major issues. Like we saw the same script with Penn State. Like Penn State forced, I don't even know how many turnovers. It was like, must have been like 25. I know it was like a 33% turnover rate that they forced, which is extremely high. It's one of the higher turnover rates I've seen this year. But yeah, Smith can't get into foul trouble in this game or else there's going to be some major issues for Purdue. but I do think they can shoot their way to a victory, especially, behind a home crowd. I think they can get the job done. It'll depend on Wade Taylor getting quality looks as well, because I don't really think Purdue has a great defender for him. But will Wade Taylor do what Wade Taylor does, be that Jekyll and Hyde kind of guy? I do think he can be closer, to the good side of that. Like he should get some clean looks, and when Wade Taylor gets clean looks, he doesn't miss them all that often. It's just a matter of him like forcing contested looks. So I'm not going to completely trust him to get those clean looks and take great shots here in this game. So I'll take Purdue, and I'll trust Matt Painter to have an answer, at least for the aggressive rebounding Texas A&M team. I'll take them to get a close win in Indy.
Yeah, go get us a tough one, Wade. That's all I got. That's all I've got. I think Purdue wins this game. I just think that Braden Smith's he started to look a lot better, shooting the ball well, taking care of the ball since that Penn State loss. I think he does a good job just kind of orchestrating the offense. Cam Heide he broke out in their last game. I think that Purdue's going to get the best shots more often than Texas A&M is going to get the best shots. And I think ultimately it's going to come down to that. And for that reason, I think that Purdue's going to win the game because they're just going to get too good of shots. If Texas A&M can get on the glass, that could be a problem. But I think Purdue can be solid enough with Kaufman-Renn and Heide helping out there, the guards rebounding down, and first maybe a little bit. But I think they'll be okay. As long as they take care of the ball on the offensive end, I think that'll win out, because I think Texas A&M can just be a little bit undisciplined at times with shot selection and turnovers and that kind of stuff. So I like Purdue to get a nice quality win here.
Yeah, for the A&M side, I don't understand why Buzz Williams is kind of handing over the keys to Zurich Phelps a little bit. Like, he's proven throughout his career that he's not an efficient scorer, and he turns the ball over a ton. Like, A&M's turnover rate is kind of skyrocketed with him basically running the point guard position. Like, with Wade Taylor, they've been a top 25 turnover rate offense in the country, and now they're ranking like outside the top 150. And that's a really bad trait to have for this team that doesn't make a ton of shots. Like, obviously they create their value getting on the offensive glass, but they also created their value by taking care of the ball. And they don't really have that with Zurich Phelps kind of running the show to an extent. So that's something to monitor throughout the rest of the year.
Yeah. Now we have another game, UCLA coming off that heroic win against Oregon, and they're playing Arizona here. Old conference rivals, now Big 10, Big 12. So unfortunate that this is the case, but here we are, the new world of college sports. And Arizona really needs this win. UCLA just cracked into the top 25 this week. Not really sure if it's, I mean, like, they deserve it for what they've done so far, but I don't know if it's where they really belong as of yet. Arizona, they need this game way more, and personally, I think that because of that, like, they're going to win anyway. Like, they're going to be uber motivated for this game, playing against their old conference rival. I'm actually going to go out on a limb and say Caleb Love actually has a good game.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a bold statement here at this point. He looks very disinterested, but hey, if he's going to come out and play with fire and desperation, it's the rest of the roster. They need this game so badly, and I do think they win, because I'm not super bought into what UCLA is doing, especially on the offensive side of the ball. Like, when you're running offense through like the middle post-up game of Tyler Bilodeau and kind of living with his contested mid-range jumpers half the time, it's not going to work. Like, I don't think Mick Cronin really knows how to run a good offense, to be completely honest with you. And I don't think they have like great personnel. Like, obviously the personnel is better than last season, and they're not going to be like a outside the top 150 in offensive efficiency. Like, I still think they're closer to 100 than they are to their ranking right now, around like 45. I just think I'm just not super bought into what Cronin is doing offensively. They just made a ton of shots against Oregon. They made over 50% of their threes, and that's why they won the game, including the bank three from Andrews to win it. But yeah, so overall, I'm not super bought in, and their defense has holes against like better teams. Those them in transition. Oregon had some success on the interior, especially with Nate Biddle. And Arizona has guys that can get all over the glass. You know, Toby Awaka, Krivas, V-Star can get on the glass. Carter Bryant off the bench can also have a bunch of success in this game. But if UCLA can slow down Arizona, I don't think Arizona's guards have much of an answer. But I do think Arizona is able to force enough turnovers, get out in transition, and kind of control that like a faster pace environment, especially with a friendlier home environment playing at the Footprint Center.
Yeah. Like I said, I think that Arizona can disrupt this UCLA offense. I think Arizona is just going to come out more energetic. UCLA is coming off that emotional victory over Oregon. I think Arizona is just going to come out the hungrier team, get on the glass, get out and run, kind of do what they do best, and hopefully get back to the basketball that most people expected them to play this year. They just haven't hit that yet. And I like I said earlier in a few episodes ago, I expect them to figure it out eventually. Like, I don't think that this version of Arizona is what they're going to be come season's end. And, it'll be a long season if it is.
Yeah, I mean, they're not a 500 team, obviously. Like, I do think they're closer to middle of the pack of the Big 12 than they are like an elite Big 12 team. Like, this, it's so top heavy, and these teams are so good. There's like 6 teams at the top that can win the league, and I don't even have Arizona as a part of that. But I do think they've been defending a little bit better than their numbers have showed. Like, they've been pretty unlucky from three. I think teams are shooting like 38% against them this season. So I don't think UCLA is a great candidate to continue to hit a bunch of shots, even though they did last game. And when UCLA, like, if you're running offense through Sky Clark at portions of a game, like, I'm not going to be bought into your offense. Like, he's been taking care of the ball, but I just don't see the development like trending in the right direction since his Illinois days. I just don't think he's that great, and I don't think he should be running offense for a top 25 team.
Yeah, no, but probably the biggest game of the weekend features Gonzaga again. Gonzaga plays UConn at Madison Square Garden. So Gonzaga is going to travel across the country here and play UConn in their backyard. UConn has kind of righted the ship after their trip to Maui, won a couple big games over Baylor at home, and then Texas on the road. They appear to be back to playing Husky basketball, and if they hadn't, then Hurley might have had a stroke. But they're back for now. As long as they win on Saturday, he'll probably have a pretty good feeling going into conference play, which I believe starts next week for them. So this is a big game for both sides. Gonzaga blew that lead last weekend against Kentucky. So they find themselves in another key matchup against a top 10 team, or not a top 10 team. UConn, where are they at now? I forgot.
18.
Okay, yeah. But, a team that started the season in the top 5, and they were there until that Maui trip. And I still consider them a top 10 team, maybe back end top 10, but, they're better than 18th in the country. So this Gonzaga team's got a true test on their hands against UConn, and what's much more of a home game for them than it is for the Gonzaga faithful.
Yeah, I mean, they call this place Store South at this point. That's what a lot of UConn fans like to call it. So it's going to be a super friendly crowd for them. Like, you can essentially call this a home game. And actually, I do like them to win this game too. I think the UConn hate on the defensive side of the ball has gone way too far. They're due for major positive shooting regression, especially with that Maui trip. They got just gouged from three. I think that they gave up over 50% in that stretch of 3 games, and that's not sustainable. They're not playing on those soft rims anymore. This defense, they limit 3-point Like their 3-point rate is allowed is super low. They limit catch and shoot opportunities. Like this is still a really good defense despite them not having Klingon. Like they have 2 guys up front that can absolutely hold their own against EK and Braden Huff and whoever else Gonzaga throws out there. I think they can have a ton of success on the offensive end too. Like being able to slow down Gonzaga is like a pretty big key to success when you're trying to, take them down. Like I wouldn't call them transition reliant, but they do love to get out and run at any chance they can get. And if you can score efficiently against them, especially against their front court, it's going to limit the amount of times that they can get out and run. They got exposed a bit last game against Kentucky, and a guy like Taurus Reed should be able to have a lot of success either on the glass, in the post-up game, in the pick and roll game. Even Samson Johnson going over the top of EK and Huff, who are more like below the rim centers. Like they're not going to get up and defend a Samson Johnson lob by any means. So. No. Yeah, I think UConn can have efficient enough offense in this game and keep the pace where they want it to where they can give themselves enough opportunities to win this game. And I do think they steal it behind the home crowd, despite them probably being an underdog here.
Yeah, they'll probably be an underdog. I don't think it's right. I think UConn is better than Gonzaga. Personally, I had them ranked above them a few weeks ago, and I don't hold a ton of stock in that Maui trip. They had their flaws, but I'm not going to overreact to it. Like long term, I still trust this UConn team probably more than this Gonzaga team. This Gonzaga team has its issues on the defensive end. They're elite on the offensive end, but I think that UConn as a whole, much more well-rounded offensively, defensively, coaching. So I think this game behind basically a home crowd, UConn's going to be fired up to pick up a third straight against another quality top level opponent. I expect them to come in here, win this game, slow Gonzaga down a little bit, force them to take some tough shots. And like you said, those 2 bigs, or I guess the 3 bigs for Gonzaga, can't really jump. They're not going to be able to hang with those guys at the rim. So I think that UConn's offense is going to look much more like they did against the Longhorns on Sunday, and kind of get whatever they want against this Gonzaga defense.
I agree. And Gonzaga's not going to bother them either. So, and yeah, UConn's beaten the last 2 times. So I guess you could call it like a revenge or a double revenge situation for the Zags, but I think UConn just has their number. And the fact that they can't bother these guards is gonna cost them here.
Yeah. So that should be an exciting game. Another game just to quickly mention: Tennessee plays Illinois this weekend, as we talked about earlier in the episode. Illinois looking to be playing some really good basketball. I know they lost to Northwestern to open up Big Ten play, but they since got right back on track with a win over Wisconsin the other night. Tennessee continues to win. They're number 1 in the country. But this should be an interesting game, I think. Like, can Yakachonis take care of the basketball against Tennessee's pressure? Can his size kind of overwhelm and limit the pressure that Tennessee is able to provide or able to give? I think that will be an interesting thing to monitor here in this game.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's the biggest factor in this game. And I do think his size could kind of give those guys some issues, although Meshack can kind of match. Like he's not as tall.
He's like 6'2".
He's definitely a lot wider. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think he's the more physical guard, obviously, in that game. But this is a prove it to me spot for the Volunteer offense. Like they haven't really been tested on the offensive side? I wouldn't say so. Like I guess Louisville gave them somewhat of a tough time, even though they dominated them defensively. They turned the ball over a ton against Louisville. They turned it over like 30% of the time. And Zakai Ziegler especially has turned the ball over a lot this season. They're asking him to handle the ball a lot more often since, like, as good as Lanier is, he's not really a handler all that much. Like he can handle and score himself a little bit, but against top tier competition, I'm still a bit skeptical. Like the spot up shooting is going to get limited for him too. So he's going to have to score off the bounce, maybe a little bit in pick and roll, but they don't love to use him there. Barnes doesn't love to use pick and roll in general. So I actually think it's a pretty good spot for Illinois' defense to, kind of prove that Tennessee's offense was a bit fraudulent for where they're sitting at right now. But if Yakachonis can't take care of the ball, Tennessee is going to be able to get turnovers for touchdowns, and it could end up being a long day for them. But I will trust him enough. Him and Boswell in the backcourt can do enough to get the home win here.
Yeah. I think it's a tough spot for Tennessee here. On the road, playing against Illinois, who appears to be playing pretty good basketball, and they have good guards that I think can take care of the ball, assuming Yakachonis isn't throwing it to the other team. But I think that they'll be good enough to at least cover whatever the spread is. I don't know what it's going to be. I don't know what it projects at.
I think you'd see it around 1.5 to 2 in favor of Tennessee.
I think it's probably an Illinois win. Wouldn't be surprised if Tennessee just ends up locking them down, forcing enough turnovers, getting out and running and scoring that way. But I think Illinois does enough. They're playing some better basketball now. And I think that loss to Northwestern overtime on the road, like that's a tough place to play. That's a team that's a lot better than people are giving them credit for. I don't think that's a bad loss. So I think that Illinois comes out of here with a win.
Yeah, and one thing to note for Tennessee is they don't really have any big man depth anymore. They lost JP Estrella for the year, and they don't have Cameron Carr right now. So they're either running Cade Phillips out there as the backup center, or they're playing small with Igor Milicic, which it's going to take away from what they can do defensively. Illinois can have success on the glass this game with Avicic and even Merez Johnson off the bench, who's been all over the glass this year. So I think Illinois can actually win the rebound battle here, which is big because Tennessee kind of relies on that at times.
Yeah. So moving on, we had a few questions come in again in our Q&A post from yesterday. So we got, I think, 3 questions and a comment. So we'll respond to all of those. First question: which mid-major team can make the biggest run in March?
I have 3 of them, and I always love a little good mid-major talk, as I did in the middle of the episode. But I picked out 3. Liberty from Conference USA, who's probably like my favorite one of the 3. Lipscomb from the A-Sun, and then UC Irvine from the Big West. Liberty plays at a super slow pace, and they have efficient offense, which are my 2 main keys to like taking down like the giants of the NCAA tournament. They could come into this tournament as like, they're probably going to come in as like one of the top mid majors. They'll be sitting at like the 13 line. They can give a 4 seed that likes to run up and down. They can give them a ton of problems if they can have efficiency in the half court. They added size in this offseason. They had no size last year, which gave them some problems. I was super high on this team last year, and I'm very high on them this year as well with the added size with Isaiah Enan up front. He's been a great versatile defender for Richie McKay. And then moving on to Lipscomb. Lipscomb just has shooters all over the court, and they rebound super well on the defensive side. So that should keep them in any game. They have 5 shooters on the floor at all times. So it'll make it a really tough cover for, these high major teams that have not super athletic bigs, like guys that just rely on their post-up game and don't really move well in space. I think Lipscomb can give some teams issues there. And then UC Irvine, like, they're probably the best mid-major, like true mid-major in the country. Like, obviously I'm not counting like the West Coast Conference or the A-10 or the Mountain West. They probably have the best defense in the mid-major ranks besides that right now. They can give anyone trouble. The perimeter defense is great. And then Bent Leukten up front, the 7-footer, is very good. Russell Turner kind of filters everything into Bent Leukten, playing drop coverage, running shooters off the line. And he's been great with more minutes this year. So that's another team to look out for.
Yeah, I'm all in on the Anteaters. This is probably the most random thing I own, but I have a UC Irvine shirt. My sister
bring that out this year.
My sister bought it for me back in 2019 because I'd picked them to go to the Sweet 16 the year before, led by Max Hazard, who's a fun guard, Colin Welp up front. You know, that was a fun team. I remember them playing. Who did they? I think they started the tournament against like Kansas State, and took them down in the first round. And I remember like just going nuts, wearing my UC Irvine shirt, loving every minute of it. So I love the Anteaters pick. Moving on, next question we have, or more of a comment. This is from a UConn fan. Marquette is about to win the Big East, and he's not happy about it.
Yeah, I mean, they're probably the favorite. Like if I had to pick one right now, I think they're pretty much 1A, 1B with UConn though. If UConn proves that their defense is going to be fine, then they're going to be the favorite, which I guess I'd lean a little bit more towards their defense being okay. I've been a Marquette fader the entire year, but I've started to buy into what they do. They create so much value turning teams over. And Cam Jones might just be better than Tyler Kolek and Oso Ighodaro combined. Like those losses meant nothing to this offense apparently. And, you know, they run offense through the guy. He's done everything you needed in a point guard, along with his ability to score around the rim. Like I like to call him the left-handed Kyrie Irving, basically, especially of college basketball, at least. Like he's elite scoring around the rim. I believe his percentage around the rim is like 75% this year, and that's like honestly impossible to think of for a guard. So yeah, if I had to pick one right now, I would say Marquette slightly, but I have these teams like right next to each other in my ratings. So
yeah, I'm gonna put this UConn fan at ease. I still have UConn as the favorite to win the Big East, but I think Marquette's right there, like you said. I just trust UConn a bit more right now. But you know, who knows? Cam Jones can carry a team to a win any night. So you know, and as good as he's been, we'll see. Another question. We had big news in the recruiting world yesterday. AJ DeBanza, number 1 overall recruit for 2025, committed to BYU. He was down to 4: Kansas, Alabama, UNC, BYU, and yesterday morning on First Take, committed live to BYU. And there's been buzz around this for a while, but this was something that I really wasn't going to believe it until I saw it. And, you know, it was really true. And he got paid a lot of money. So good for him.
yeah, I mean, it helps that he got 7 million was the reported number for him to go. A lot of people are saying he got 10 to 12, but there's no way that's true. I mean, 7 mil is plenty for 1 year of college basketball, I think. But I personally love that he decided to go here. He's going to be able to play in NBA concepts with Kevin Young, who's probably one of the best coaches in the country when it comes to offensive scheme already. He's going to put him in great spots to succeed. I wouldn't be surprised if DeBanza put up close to 25 a night in this system. They're going to play super fast. They're going to be perimeter centric. Obviously, everything's going to go through him. So I like the move. I mean, he's from Utah, so the decision made more sense. And I don't mind that he's not in the blue blood. Like the casual fan probably doesn't like this move. They probably wanted to see him go to North Carolina or Kansas, and I'm not in on that. Like, go to the program that fits you best, and go to the program that gives you the most money. So I think DeBanza's in a very good spot.
Yeah, I think that this hire by BYU is very underrated. Kevin Young, coming from the NBA, has the ability to attract guys in a way that other coaches can't, and that's that he has that NBA background that he can. You know, he's an experienced guy. He's a younger guy, but he's been around basketball and NBA concepts, and so I think like for the player that like DeBanza, who's looking to make that leap to the NBA next year right away, you know, I think this is a great move for him, you know, to get in on some of those NBA concepts right away. So I think we may start to see more guys going to BYU or wherever, if Kevin Young makes a move somewhere else down the road, like wherever he ends up, because I think he could end up being one of the most influential recruiters out there because of his background.
Absolutely. I mean, he was interviewing for NBA head coaching jobs before he took the BYU job. So, yeah, and he's super offensive minded, and like, who doesn't want to play for a guy like that? So, and I wouldn't be surprised if he stayed at BYU for a long time, like knowing how much money they can give out. I mean, obviously, in the future, we don't know what this NIL is going to look like. We don't know if there's going to be a salary cap or whatever, but I don't really know how you manage all of that stuff. People will get paid under the rug anyway. So, yeah, really good spot for DeMonsta to go for his 1 year of college basketball.
Yeah. And then the final question was about our Elite Eight picks with one sleeper, and our sleeper pick has to be different.
All right. Well, I'll say my sleeper for the end. I'll go Duke, Iowa State, Gonzaga, Alabama, UConn, Texas Tech, St. John's, and then my sleeper is going to be St. Mary's. I really like St. Mary's. I like how they've improved their offense. Guys like Paulus Maraskis and Mikey Lewis have really kind of flipped the script for this team, turned them a little more offensive centric while still keeping the good defense and rebounding. So I think it gives them a slightly higher ceiling come March. They can give anybody a tough time. They can stay in any game with their slow paced style. And Augustus Marciulionis is one of the more underrated point guards in the entire country. So, and I love Randy Bennett as a coach. So I'll take St. Mary's as my sleeper. And I didn't put Auburn on there for whatever reason. Like if you put a gun to my head, I would probably put Auburn in the Elite Eight, but it's just something there that the last 2 years have kind of spooked me off of taking Auburn to go deep in the tournament.
Yeah. I think this Auburn team's just a little bit different. So for me, I'm gonna throw Auburn in there. Iowa State, Duke. I like Alabama. I have this feeling about Kentucky. I have this feeling about Mark Pope and what he's doing over there. So I'm going to go Kentucky. I still believe in Kansas. I still believe in UConn. I know this is kind of chalky, probably. But my eighth team I'm going to throw out there probably as more of a deeper flyer. They also happen to be the Flyers. I'm throwing Dayton out there. I thought I really liked how the way that they played in Maui. They can compete with these top teams. They've played a tough schedule, and I like their ability to compete with these top tier teams. And they play. I think they play Marquette this week, so I'll be really interested to see how that game goes. That game's on Saturday. But they beat UConn. They really should have beaten UNC. They hung around with Iowa State. They beat Northwestern, who looks to be a better team than people expected. Like this Dayton team, I think is good enough to hang around with top level teams. So I'm going to throw a flyer out there on the Flyers and say they make the Elite Eight.
Yeah, I definitely like that. The offense is pretty elite, honestly. They have 3 point guards that they can run out there anytime and take care of the ball at a super high level, and they have a ton of shot makers. Malachi Smith is healthy now. He's pretty much 100% healthy. He looks every bit the part of the recruit that he was. So, yeah, I do like that. I like the flyer you took there on the Flyers.
Yeah. But yeah, so, as we said, not a great week of games this week, unfortunately. Got some better ones this weekend, couple ranked matchups. And some other solid games to keep an eye on that we didn't talk about in this. But as always, we're going to be coming out with some articles, and we'll also have our best bets episode coming out on Saturday morning. But keep up with the content, get into the Discord, follow the action account. We're now up, I think, 16 and a half units. So keep up with that stuff if you're looking to make some cash, hopefully. But other than that, enjoy the games this weekend, and we'll talk to you in the next episode.